Welcome to the AgriAsia Commodities Podcast. I'm Kang, Vice President of the Soft Agricultural Commodities Asia team at StoneX. Thanks for joining me for this extended update on palm oil, soybeans, and the wider edible oil complex. Last week, palm oil futures slipped to a 6-week low, despite Argentina reinstating export taxes after filling its 7 billion duty-free quota. Palm prices could not sustain a rebound. Argentina's short suspension of export taxes had a dramatic effect, unleashing a wave of exports. In just 3 days, exporters registered 5.1 million metric tons of soybeans, 1.5 million metric tons of soybean oil, and 7.1 million metric tons of soybean meal. Importers, especially India, were quick to take advantage of cheaper soybean oil. But this price gap is not expected to last, with soybean oil likely to regain strength relative to palm oil in the months ahead. Weather has broadly supported production in Southeast Asia. Indonesia avoided major droughts in 2025, with only a short dry spell in July. Aside from North Sumatra, most regions saw adequate rainfall, which will support yields into 2026. In Malaysia, however, the story is different. We saw production peaked in 2019 at 19.86 million metric tons, but they have struggled since because of aging tree profiles in Sabah, labor shortages during COVID, and climate shocks from 3 straight La Nina years followed by El Nino in 2023. Production recovered in 2024 to 19.34 million metric tons as El Nino faded, and 2025 output should be steady. But after 2 strong years, 2026 output is expected to slow, with Peninsular Malaysia flattening and Sabah weighed down by old trees and replanting delays. For Indonesia, Indonesia's production has been erratic but is expected to post healthy growth in 2025, rising more than 5% to potentially crossing 50 million metric tons for the first time. That momentum will likely taper in the second half, and in 2026, output should stay above the 50 million metric tons, but without significant growth. One uncertainty is the government's crackdown on more than 3 million hectares of illegally operated plantations, including the transfer of 1.5 million hectares to state-owned Agrinas Palma Nusantara. While the near-term impact may be limited, these moves could affect long-term supply dynamics. Turning to biodiesel, Indonesia's B40 mandate has stabilized, but B50 remains in trial stage and is unlikely before 2027. If B50 were implemented today without lifting the moratorium on new plantations, it could create shortages and drive prices sharply higher. Already, the biodiesel program consumes volumes equivalent to Malaysia's annual exports. Funding pressures, higher levies, and delayed payments are possible risks going forward. And technically, moving from B40 to B50 requires advanced fuels like DPME and HVO, where Indonesia lacks processing capacity. Meanwhile, policy developments in Europe are also shaping trade flows. On September 23rd, EU Commissioner Jessica Roswell confirmed that Brussels will delay its anti-deforestation law for a second time. The law was meant to ban imports of commodities like soybeans, beef, cocoa, and palm oil linked to forest destruction. Originally scheduled for this year, it had already been delayed once after pushback from major trade partners including Brazil, Indonesia, and the US. Now, the EU cites technical issues with the IT system as a reason for the postponement. For Indonesia, this delay is significant. GAPKI Chairman Edi Matono expects palm oil exports to the EU to rise in 2026, supported by the free trade agreement with Europe and the delayed law. He forecasts exports to the EU climbing to 4 million metric tons in 2026, up from 3.3 million metric tons this year. Exports to India are also expected to hit 5 million metric tons in 2025, although 2026 volumes will depend on relative prices versus soybean oil. With Argentina scraping export duties, cheaper soybean oil could lure Indian buyers away from palm. On the same day, Indonesia and the EU signed a substantive conclusion of their comprehensive economic partnership deal in Bali. The agreement will remove tariffs on 80% of Indonesia products, including palm oil, fishery, and textiles. Indonesia expects trade with the EU to double within 5 years of implementation and plans to have the deal in force by January 2027. For the EU, this will also secure access to Indonesian critical minerals. India has also been active in the market. Last week, Indian buyers purchased 300,000 metric tons of soybean oil from Argentina over 2 days, the largest such purchase ever, taking advantage of Argentina's zero-duty policy. These aggressive imports will help Argentina reduce its stockpile, but they could limit palm oil shipments to India from Malaysia and Indonesia in the coming months. Looking into the first half of 2026, palm oil and soybean oil prices are expected to rise on tighter supplies and stronger biodiesel use in the US, Brazil, and Indonesia. Production growth in palm oil is expected to slow down next year, with only 1 million additional output projected for 2026 versus this year. Malaysian RBD palm oil prices could gain significantly if Indonesia's plantation seizures curb production. Argentina soybean oil looks undervalued at the moment, and it may climb on biodiesel demand. In India, sunflower oil's premium over soybean oil is expected to fade by March as Black Sea and Argentine supplies improve. India's vegetable oil imports are forecasted to hit a record 18 million metric tons in 25/26, up 1.5 million metric tons year on year. This includes palm oil imports of 9.3 million metric tons, which is up 13.4%, while sunflower oil imports are projected to fall 10% to 2.7 million metric tons. To wrap up, palm oil remains under pressure in the short term, but the medium-term story is more supportive, with 2026 shaping up to be a friendly year due to slowing production growth, policy uncertainties, and resilient demand. The soybean complex fundamentals remain mixed, with heavy fund selling weighing on futures, but trade flow and biofuel demand will be key drivers in the months ahead. This concludes today's AgriAsia Commodities Podcast. I'm Kang from StoneX, Vice President of the Soft Agricultural Commodities Asia team. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to bringing you the next update.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a recommendation to trade, an investment research, or an offer to buy or sell any financial product. It does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs. The trading of financial products such as futures, options, or swaps involves a substantial amount of risk and may not be suitable for everyone. Past results are not indicative of future performance. You are advised to perform an independent investigation of any transaction to determine whether any transaction is suitable for you.